or the mud tank. So this is where the water comes in, the freshwater water. For just fresh water, we mix it with the gelling agent and things like that to make freshwater mud. So what we have here is we have capacity. We have a certain amount of barrels on here. I'll show you how the return system works, but the fluid is taken out of here, the drilling mud's taken out of these tanks. The clean drilling mud is taken into the pump. It's pulled out of these tanks, taken into these pumps, and on the discharge side of these pumps, it's pushed back into the well. So the fluid goes down the drill pipe, up on the floor, goes down the drill pipe, out of the bit, and that serves as two things. It serves as lubricity to the bit, keeps the bit lubricated so it gets hot, obviously. And it also uses to bring the cuttings to surface. So the viscosity of that mud helps take the chips of the rock that we're doing and bring them back to the surface. So it goes down, the drill pipe comes out the hole, and it comes back up through the return line. So those are the mud pumps. And when we were talking about inside, those are both 1,600 horsepower mud pumps. Those are big pumps. So, two of them. And they work together just like a generator. They work in tandem together.
I can't quite zoom out as far as I want. I'm going to try this lens one more time. It keeps fogging up on me. It's kind of chilly out here.
Let's see if it'll...
That's pretty good, actually. It's a little better. Yeah, we'll try that. Okay.
What we talked about, the drilling mud goes down the drill pipe, and then as it comes back up the hole, it's coming through these return lines right here. So the drilling mud's coming out of the hole, and now what it's got is it's got the little cuttings of rock that comes into this manifold system. The reason this manifold system looks so complicated is this is the way the rig moves. So right now we're rigged up on this one. If we move 7.5 feet, this flange flanges up there. So each one of these flanges is 7.5 feet. You don't have to move all of this equipment here when the rig moves. It stays right where it's at. So the only thing that moves is the substructure of the rig. And it's on a skid system, and I'll show you some. The pumps, what we call the backyard, which is this, the tanks and everything, all of those things don't move. They stay right where they're at. They're all set up to be on 7.5 foot center, so that all the rig has to do is move 7.5 feet, flange up a couple more bolts, go right back to drilling.
So that's as far apart as you put most of the wells, about 7.5?
Every rig's set up a little differently, but the FlexRigs are set up on what we call 7.5 foot centers. And it's actually not only in one direction. Let's say here we're drilling east to west, it's also north to south. This rig can move 7.5 feet this direction, north, and set up on the same principle. It's got the same, they've got spacer spools and things that work in here, where they not only can drill in one direction, they can move in the other direction. So if you wanted to drill 10 wells in one direction, or 10 wells, move over to the other set of rows and drill 10 wells over there, you can do that before you ever have to move any equipment. It's all set up to move that. That's specific to a rig like a FlexRig. Another rig, again, if you were to move a conventional rig, as we talked about before, 10 feet, you'd have to get all this equipment over here and drag it and move it 10 feet. It's only set up to move it, to connect itself in one spot. So the whole rig, pumps, rig, tanks, front yard, everything would have to be moved. Here, it's just a substructure that moves along. Everything else stays at speed, and it happens a lot faster. So again, the mud comes into this manifold system through this pipe right here. It comes through this series of valves right here, and it's brought into this apparatus here. What these are called is they're called shakers. So what happens is the drilling mud comes up through here, and that's just steam coming off. It's just heat. The drilling mud, and that's drilling mud right there. So that's just water. Actually, what turns it gray is the rock. Drilling up, it drills it up so high. The drilling mud comes into here, drops through here, and all that into the stream. So the drilling mud, the water, drops through the stream. It's solid, so you can see those little bitty pieces. That's the earth. That's the rock that we actually drill. So it's shaken out. I'll show you where it goes over here to our closed loop system. But that's the end. We've got a series of mesh screens as far as how clean do we want it. You put different screens in here that have different diameters and allow the fluid to get through and catch certain particulate matter. See the mud coming out the bottom, and then it's dropping down into these tanks below. That's the drilling mud right there. comes out, drops a solid, or let's say that's a bigger solid, drops a bigger solid here, drops out here, and it's going to go into the centrifuge, bigger than that.
Seems a lot thinner than I would have thought.
It doesn't really have a lot of viscosity at all. It's actually, if you touch it, it's just like water. It does have some depth to give it some viscosity to pick that stuff up and give it some carrying capacity. One thing that's nice about the Barnett is it's so easy to drill that we don't need a lot of viscosity or anything to carry the cuttings out. So it really is just a kind of a dirty, gelled up water is what we drill.
Is it a lot heavier than water?
What mud weight is it? 10.4. So 10.4 pounds per gallon. So 2 pounds over water. And a lot of that actually has to do with the solids that are in it. Some of the solids are so small that just a little, you almost call it dirt, gets caught up in the mud, and that creates mud weight just because of the particulates that stay in it. So what happens here is the mud comes into this thing. This is a closed loop mud system. So the bigger cuttings, or what you saw coming off the shaker screen, comes out the back, and it's dropped in here. You can see it drops off of a little shelf right there. And it drops in these closed storage containers right here. This is what the closed loop drilling system is. We talked about nothing hits the ground. All of the particulates, now if you were out in the country, this would go into a reserve pit. There'd be an open pit, and that would go into a reserve pit. Here, this is a closed loop drilling system, so all the pieces go into these steel storage tanks. We bring in a front end loader, and it's hauled off. It goes into the bed of a truck, into an 18 wheeler, and hauled into the disposal tank. So everything that comes out of the earth, kept off the containers, comes in, maybe once a day, maybe in these kind of cases, maybe once every 2 or 3 days. Use a front end loader, it's dumped into a truck and taken on site. So that's what a closed loop drilling system is. A closed loop drilling system means there's no pit and nothing ever touches the ground. Nothing ever goes on the ground.
And that's what we'll have in Louisville, right?
That's correct. That's correct. As all the urban rigs are set up this way, all of our flex rigs are set up this way, but it's also by mandate of ordinances. Louisville has a closed loop drilling system. What happens next with the drilling mud leaves this. It's moved into this first storage tank, and it's moved into these devices here. And these are centrifuges.
These are what?
They're centrifuges.
Okay.
So what it does is the mud goes in and it's spun. So all of the heavy, anything that can be left in the mud that's bigger than or that's smaller than these little pieces you see coming off the shakers is spun out. The fluid drops out the bottom. The solids that are in it come out the back, and they come through these little things right here and go into that second storage container. Same principle here, except now you're getting the smaller particulate matter that can be entrapped that these strings don't catch. The centrifuge spins them out. So now what you've got is you've got very good drilling mud. The reason you use these is in a conventional setup where you have a reserve pit, these things go into the pit and water goes out and it has time to settle in a pond. So all those fine particulates actually settle to the bottom. Here we don't have that ability, so we use centrifuges to spin that out. So that's a centrifuge system. So when the mud comes out of that, it's got very little solids left in it. It's back to what we started with, effectively. Clean drilling system.
And that's what it has to be before it goes back down the hole.
That's correct. Before it goes through the pumps and goes through the hole, that's right. So there's a little different process. You would see this on a conventional drilling rig. These would be here. And they would be knocking out the heavy particulates, the big pieces of the shale. Which that's earth. That's the rock that we cut, the little pieces of it in the mud. That's the way it comes in. It doesn't come out in big chunks or anything like that. The bit grinds it up to that small. So that's what it does. And this one has 3 shakers on the end. But, so in a conventional system, this would be all you would have as far as your cleaning. In a closed loop system, we need to be able to get that smaller matter out of the drilling mud, so we use a centrifuge system. That's what this is. Very, very clean drilling system. Very clean fluid going back in. It goes back into the storage tanks at the end, it goes back into the pump, it goes back down the hole.
Those are the clean mud storage down at the very end down there?
These are water tanks right
those
there.
are water.
That's just water. So anytime we need fresh water, there's a fire hydrant feeding those. And so anytime we need water to make in with the mud, if we need to make up some mud or anything like that, we use that fresh water tank. That's just fresh water. Sorry, I'll get out of your way.